5 seconds to go. Start. Thus, it is settled that the RBI is a special expert regulatory body that is insulated from the political arena. Its decisions are reflective of its expertise in guiding the economic policy and financial stability of the nation. Adverting to the facts of this case, the RBI is empowered by FEMA to manage, regulate, and supervise the foreign exchange of India. It is trite law that courts do not interfere with the economic or regulatory policy adopted by the government. This lack of interference is in deference to the democratically elected government's wisdom, reflecting the will of the people, as held by a three-judge bench of this court in Internet and Mobile Association Supra. The regulations introduced by RBI are in the nature of statutory regulation and demand a similar level of deference that is accorded to executive and parliamentary policy. This court must be circumspect that the rights and freedoms guaranteed under the Constitution do not become a weapon in the arsenal of private businesses to disable regulation enacted in the public interest. The Constituent Assembly debates had carefully curated restrictions on rights and freedoms in order to retain democratic control over the economy. Regulation must, of course, be within the bounds of the statute and in conformity with executive policy. A regulated economy is a critical facet of ensuring a balance between private business interests and the state's role in ensuring a just polity for its citizens. The Constitution Bench in Modern Dental College Supra had remarked on the role of regulatory mechanisms in liberalized economies. Speaking for the bench, Justice A.K. Sikri had observed, regulatory mechanism, or what is called regulatory economics, is the order of the day. In the last 60 to 70 years, economic policy of this country has travelled from laissez-faire to mixed economy to the present era of liberal economy with regulatory regime. With the advent of mixed economy, there was mushrooming of the public sector and some of the key industries like aviation, insurance, railways, electricity, power, telecommunication, etc. were monopolized by the state. License permit Raj prevailed during this period with strict control of the government even in respect of those industries where private sectors were allowed to operate. However, Indian economy experienced major policy changes in early 90s on LPG model, that is liberalization, privatization and globalization. With the onset of reforms to liberalize the Indian economy in July 1991, a new chapter has dawned for India. This period of economic transition has had a tremendous impact on the overall economic development of almost all major sectors of the economy. Regulating the economy is reflective of the compromise between the interest of private commercial actors and the democratic state that represents and protects the interests of the collective. Scholars across the world have warned against the judiciary constitutionalizing an unregulated marketplace. This court must be bound by a similar obligation in order to preserve its fidelity to the Constitution. With the transformation in the economy, the courts must also be alive to the socio-economic milieu. The right to equality and the freedom to carry on one's trade cannot inhere a right to evade or avoid regulation. In liberalized economies, regulatory mechanisms represent democratic interests of setting the terms of operation for private economic actors. This court does not espouse shunning of judicial review when actions of regulatory bodies are questioned. Rather, it implores intelligent care in probing the bona fides of such action and nuanced deference to their expertise in formulating regulations. A casual invalidation of regulatory action in the garb of upholding fundamental rights and freedoms without a careful evaluation of its objective of social and economic control would harm the general interest of the public. In the instant case, the RBI has demonstrated a rational nexus in the prohibition of MTTs in respect of PPE products and the public health of Indian citizens. The critical links between FTP and MTTs have been established by the respondents. Facilitating MTTs in PPE products between two distinct nations may prima facie appear as having no bearing on the availability of domestic stocks. However, the RBI has carefully established the connection between the use of Indian foreign exchange reserves (MTTs) and the availability of domestic stocks as noted in sections C2 and C3. As a developing country with a sizable population, RBI's policy to align MTT permissibility with the FTB restrictions on import and export of PPE products cannot be questioned. Thus, this court is constrained to defer to the regulations imposed by RBI and the UOI in the interest of preserving public health in a pandemic. This deference is by no means uncritical. In fact, one of us, Justice D. Y. Chandrachud, in a three-judge bench of this court in Gujarat Mazdoor Sabha versus State of Gujarat, had declared the state's tenuous claim of a public health emergency to dilute welfare conditions in labor laws. Stop.